All right, and we're up on Instagram. We'll be live in just a minute-ish. I have to bail right at the end of the show today because I got to hit the road.
What are you doing tonight?
Nerd Halen tonight. Thank you.
Yay.
All right, hold on. 3, 2, 1.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? And I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
Now, live from Chicago, the Hal Sparks radio program Mega Worldwide.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass.
Hal Sparks, actor, comedian, and multimedia personality.
And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Hal Sparks.
All right, let's do this.
I think this is the year I lean into that multimedia personality idea. I really do.
Okay.
Johnny Million. I think now we're going to have to step it up because we're in the age of AI and everything. So I'm clearly going to have to create an AI avatar of myself that streams 24/7.
Okay.
Just program it with everything I say on all my live streams, and it'll basically just set it up to counter Trump.
Yeah, is this AI? Who cares?
Yeah, right.
It's not Trump.
Yeah, exactly. And and to counter his the lies that he tells in his, I don't know if they call them rallies anymore because they're so pitifully small.
What was the thing? I saw a clip of him with like a young woman at a podium. Is that old?
I don't know. I mean, he kind of pulls these people up and goes, every so often. It's, yeah. The weirdest thing, I gotta say, the weirdest thing was that, like, the high school dance, like, spirit team dancing for him on the lawn at Mar-a-Lago with kind of nobody else around in the video. It's like, and they posted it. Okay, so I'm sure everybody knows by now that Joe
I do
Biden,
love when he's waving
at no
when
one.
he's just waving at no one, and then they
Right.
show the camera from the other side. That's the best.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm gonna start doing that actually.
Well, it give yourself the illusion of popularity.
Yeah.
What could be wrong? Yeah, just
Just
anytime
getting in my car after I leave
Yeah.
the ice cream shop.
Just as you're walking out holding your ice cream. Thanks very much. You can always just use generative fill later on to put in a crowd and applause. But you'll notice that in the same kind of week where Donald Trump can no longer garner his own large crowds. And I personally, last Sunday, many of you know, and apparently my footage was cited all over the place. Thank you, John Schultz, for the super chat right out of the gate. Thank you for supporting the show.
On the new job. Yeah,
right on. Tell us all about it, and also how can we help? So after going to Trump's rally in Vegas, where there were, and let me say this for the people in the cheap seats, less than 3,000 people. There wasn't like a debate around 20,000, whether that's not even remotely close to possible. The space itself, when it's full, wouldn't hold 3,000. And it was 2/3 full. I showed this clearly on the video. I was sitting on the grass behind near the food trucks, behind the press wall, and it was basically empty. There was a small line for the taco truck that died, and everybody just kind of went and stood in the aisles. And then there was the snow cone truck at a nonstop line because it was hot. And then there was another, what I would call it a line. Thank you, Berkeley, for the super chat. There was another small line for the cooling/medical tent. Now, the cooling tent was actually for people who were having medical emergencies. Hal Vicker, you won't be around next week, so this is for weekend next. Oh, bless you so much, and we hope you'll certainly be around somewhere. Please don't leave us, Hal Vicker. So, travel safely. The cooling tent, what they called the cooling tent, was really where emergency personnel stood by for Trump's, his sort of, I guess, the front row Joes and the hangers on that are all, aging, poorly. They're the boomers who aren't that dedicated to their looks and maintaining youth. You know what I mean? There's those like twin arcs of boomers right now. The ones that will be young forever, face full of filler, watching their beta carotene intake and all that kind of stuff. And then there are the other ones that are just like, you got to die something, doing wheelies on their rascal scooter while, smoking cigarettes through a hole in their neck. Okay, that's the crowd that shows up for Trump.
That, I thought I was going crazy.
When you seen somebody smoke a cigarette through a hole in their neck?
Yeah, well, I think I saw it on a VHS tape in junior high. I saw it a long time ago.
Well, that'll discourage smoking, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. Not that I needed it, because my dad smoked when I was young, and it stunk, and I hated it. And
that's all you got to do.
That's all I needed. Yeah.
Yeah, my dad smoked. He said, "Yeah, I've seen an X-ray of my lungs. I don't care."
Wow.
Awesome.
Yeah, just and sometimes that's what you need to see to turn you off on it, But so going to that rally on Sunday and then posting my videos of it where everybody was like, where literally as I was entering within the first 15, 20 minutes of the actual thing, because I was in line to get in because I came way late, which you were supposed to get there at 5 a.m. to get in by 8 o'clock to get a good seat or whatever, and it literally took me all of 3 minutes once I was through the gate to get within 18 feet of Trump in the aisle, and somebody there was an empty seat. Somebody's like, "Yeah, you want to sit down?" I was like, "No." No thanks. I'm afraid that I'll get stuck. Yeah. So during that, experience, you have to understand that I think they did the Club 47 for him in Florida, which was way smaller than the Trump 45, the Project 45 gathering or whatever it was in Florida, which is just like a birthday party for him that they throw, which is just full of weird strangers and hangers-on. And then he's done 2 of these Turning Points USA things, these Charlie Kirk events, because this is the new CPAC. So after CPAC, after the Matt Schlapp groping thing, attendance at CPAC went in the crapper. And so people don't want to show up for this thing. It's a little weird that the guy running it...
Somebody got groped at CPAC?
No. Matt Schlapp, the head of CPAC, groped one of the male intern, volunteers in the car
live
on the way home.
Live on stage at CPAC?
No, not on the... No. Johnny,
I'm trying to keep up.
I appreciate it. It's hard. It's difficult. It's difficult.
Any effort into this.
I know. I appreciate it. So Matt, well, some people don't know, and thank you for reminding me that I have to fill in the gaps sometimes. But Matt Schlapp, the head of CPAC for years and years and years, and major Republican activist, has, and by the way, has not contested the fact that he groped this guy while drunk while the guy had to drive him home. And he'd done it repeatedly to other people, but in this particular instance, he grabbed the guy's crotch. He pulled a Trump on him, and apparently Matt Schlapp is not a star, apparently, on the Trump scale in that regard.
So because when you're a star, they let you do anything.
Yeah, he didn't let him do it. He let him get away with it. He didn't beat him up or anything like that. He didn't attack him for being groped or attacked himself, but that was that. So after that incident, things started to, forgive the term, peter out over at CPAC. So the fallback is Turning Points USA. Now, Turning Points USA was supposed to be the young Republicans. Turning Points USA is about recruiting, the Ben Shapiro clique of college douchebags to join the Republican Party. The guys who have just cracked the first chapter of Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged and decided that's what makes them a Republican.
Say their first Ayn Rand book.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so they're just working their way through it when these guys swoop in and try to, give them hand them a pamphlet. You know what I mean? Kind of like the Moonies or the Koresh people or Dianetics. You know what I mean? It is, Ayn Rand is the Dianetics of the Republican Party. Early on, if you skim it and you don't realize, oh, okay, this is just kind of a mix of crap.
And you squint.
Right. It's basically the Bible. So Turning Points USA has been aimed at encouraging younger Republican voters to enter the fold and drive the youth movement towards the Republican Party to try and be their big youth vote outreach. Now, there's a couple problems with that. One is the youth vote, and I don't know how many times I have to tell people this, is a mirage. Every time, like, you need to get people involved in democracy. You need to get kids, as they turn 18, voting, and that's good. But the idea that a motivated youth vote will ever be there in any major way without sort of some like law, like selective service where you have to vote or you get fined or something like that, you're just going to always be chasing a large group, a reasonable sized group of voters that just aren't going to do it. Okay. Yep. And it's just how it is. And a lot of it has to do with like the ones that are smart enough to do it. There's a lot of like Republican states where they don't want college kids voting in their district. So they want to make it harder for them. So either they, stop mail-in voting in Illinois. If they come down, they're going to school in South Carolina so that they can't vote back home. And also don't let them vote locally. Don't let them register because they're living there for 4 years. Make them people, sort of qualified as out-of-staters, right? So you don't have this weird liberal carpetbag vote of people who, carpetbagger vote of people who, are there to educate themselves, which would upend your control over the electorate in the area because you're counting on the unelected to keep you in office, right? So that's been the plan for a very long time. And the funniest thing about, if you look at the Trump impact on Turning Points USA, beside the fact that they can't get rent, I don't think they can't rent large venues with him involved because people won't let them. It's like, this is just a Trump rally under another name. Stop it. You got to pay a double fee for security because he stiffed us last time. Is that they do it under the guise of Turning Points USA. And then, of course, they've been doing them in mega churches where they already have a guaranteed audience. Right? And still not packed. You would think that in places he had rallies back in the day of 35,000 people, and he's in a mega church that holds, about 5,000 people, I think was the one that they did, TPS USA. And there's a lot of empty seats. The upper part is completely shut off. That would be kind of a sign. Again, yard signs do not equal votes, and just because you have 9 Trump flags on your truck does not mean you get to vote more than once, no matter how much you'd like to try. But hey, I will say that there is a moment, if I may, where I support something that Lara Trump said at one of these gatherings. And I'm all for it, and I think it's fabulous, and I hope she follows through on what she said. I don't suspect they will, but I'll tell you what it is after the break. It's the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, now with 100% more Johnny Million. He's got a live stream, on Twitch and YouTube. It's Johnny Million. You got to check it out 2 times a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays. And I'm on Infotainment Wars all week long. You can support the show on patreon.com/Hal Sparks or via Super Chat and other stuff. We'll be back right after this. Yeah. So, it's in the Lara Trump thing is in the show notes for today if you want to take a look at it, Johnny. Good. Yeah. And then there's a whole weird criminal subplot thing at the top of that, which relates to another thing that I'm going to talk about as far as like crime. Yep.
Lara Trump vows to prosecute anyone who cheats in election. Okay, cool. You know who you're about to prosecute?
Exactly. Everybody in the villages. Berkeley says, happy Saturday, Sparklers, with the super chat. I read Hell Victories, but he said I won't be around next week. So this is for this week and next. Thank you so much for that. And John Schultz says, I'm starting a fantastic new job and wanted to celebrate with my fellow Sparklers. Keep up the good work, Hal and Johnny. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chicago. And then for all you do, Hal, and then a bunch of emojis. Thank you, Barbie, for that. Barbie music. Thank you. Crunch, 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 munchity crunch.
At least I'm doing it in between radio parts.
I appreciate that. I do. And then you're going to put in a sound effect of crunching.
Fart.
Yeah, right. Fart, crunch, crunch.
I forgot about this.
Uh-oh.
Welcome back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
All right, so it's a, all right.
Remember that?
All right, Talking Points USA. Isn't that the trigger?
It is.
Wow, that's loud. Oh my God. That's more what the Talking Points USA or Turning Points USA
Definitely.
should be. Yeah. So everybody's, I'm sure, wondering what Hal could possibly agree with Lara Trump on. And here it is, ladies and gentlemen. Lara Trump vows to prosecute anyone who cheats in an election. We will track you down. Now, I don't know if you know this, Johnny Million, but in 2020, they did a lot of tracking people down.
Yeah, I think I heard about that when they dug into those.
They dug into those people who voted a couple of times, right? And most of them lived in the villages in Florida. So, Lara Trump, if you want to throw the book at these folks, they voted some of them 4 times, and that would mean, I guess, 5 years minimum for each of those. So I don't know why they're not getting 20 years in jail. Hopefully, Lara Trump will put the hammer down and insist. Because it's, for the sake of our elections and our democracy.
My favorite was the guy, didn't he put sunglasses on and go back into the voting booth?
Yes, he certainly did.
Vote? Yeah. They'll never.
Right.
They'll never suspect me.
Yeah. And there's all the apocryphal story that Trump tells about the lady who puts on her hat and goes down to vote, and then when she arrives at the booth, someone's already voted in her stead, and she just weeps quietly to herself and goes home instead of calling a police officer and saying, this is this is voter fraud. Trump said this was going to happen, and here I am, a witness. I did not vote, and now someone has voted in my stead. But why would she leave and just let it happen? Unless she already voted once by mail, was trying to vote twice, got caught, and tried to skulk away pretending that she didn't get caught. That's why. That's exactly why. Okay. The other thing, too, is Trump, obviously cleaning up with the wife murderer vote when that guy allegedly, because they're still trying him for this, his wife disappeared.
Oh my.
And while he was, on the news hoping his wife would come back, she was dead the whole time. And he used her ballot to vote for Trump. Because it's what she would have wanted. Now, I personally think what she would have wanted was not to be murdered.
Specifically.
On a scale, I think she would have been able to. I think she would have rather been alive to make that decision herself. But Lara Trump says we will track you down. That's fine, because you know what that means when you track down all these fraudulent votes, you will find Republican election judges who unlawfully are throwing out mail-in votes from Biden voters, based on his, overcomplicating the signature process or something, like just not allowing any variance whatsoever, acting like he's a forensic signature expert, standing over there and throwing them out just because they're there. Just because, let's just throw any mail-in vote we can just throw out because I don't see the proper postage or whatever. Don't cure them. Don't call anybody. Don't reach out to the voters so that voters' votes count. No, throw them out immediately. That person, I hope she goes after that person as well. Now, there was another story which in the Intelligencer, which was fascinating to me. Biden could lose the popular vote and still win because of the states that he has growing strength in. And why is that? Well, it's in many ways the same way George Bush did and the same way that Donald Trump did. Donald Trump is at risk of losing Florida, according to recent polls. There was a point early on where Donald Trump had a runaway chance at Florida, of course, 50 to 42. He had 50% and Biden had 42, as far as the like. Now they are within the statistic. They're inside the margin of error statistically. They are, I want to say, if they have it here, 46, 42 at this point. It is shrinking. Now, if there's some Kennedy write-ins, they're all going to be Trump voters in Florida. They're not going to. There's nobody who's going to vote for Biden or was going to vote for Biden or voted for Biden last time is going to jump to Kennedy this cycle, unless Biden magically got a slice of the woman hater vote, and this time they feel committed to making sure that women do not cease to be treated as second-class citizens in this country, which is what's at stake in this election more than any other thing. Because again, this is not an if and a when. This is not if after this election, will we have another election? Will Trump become a dictator? These are all speculative and of lesser concern to me. Right now, this very second, as I speak to you, women are second-class citizens in the United States of America because they have to pick what rights they want to have by what state they want to live in. Men don't have to do that. None of us have to worry about it. We move to Oklahoma or we move to Texas or somebody in the military gets stationed down there that they have to worry that they have fewer rights in that state than they do in the state that they're in right now. Women do. That's right now. That's not a possibility. That's something that needs to be remedied in the next election. Period.
Yeah.
And if it isn't, it won't be. Because during a Trump presidency or a cycle where Republicans have outsized control over the House or the Senate, they will craft and push through laws and restrictions that will make it harder and harder to undo the limits on a woman's right to choose and her medical privacy. Period. That's what they're going to do. IVF, gone. Contraceptives, gone. That's what they're planning in the future. But right now, already, Donald Trump and his ilk and everybody who voted for him, didn't vote at all, or left President blank, or voted for Jill Stein, or any of that stuff in 2016, created the situation where women right now in 2024 have less rights than men do. Not the potential for it, not the option of it happening, not a scare tactic, currently. Right? That's, this isn't, I know we all talk about hypotheticals for an upcoming election. Even the Trump side is talking about hypotheticals right now. And those rights were not undone by the ruling of Dodd, but in the 2016 election. Donald Trump sat in front of Chris Matthews and said, there has to be a punishment for the woman.
Yep.
And everybody went, I don't like Hillary. She seems like a bewitched to me. And a bunch of Jill Stein voters in 3 states and a bunch of TYT acolytes decided to leave President blank or didn't vote at all or stood down or thought America deserved Donald Trump and he would help hasten the end times, the Susan Sarandon voter. And the ruling in the Supreme Court did not destroy a woman's right to choose. The 2016 election did. And that's the lesson of it. So, other than that, I have no opinion. That said, you have Florida, for example, being one of those states where they have a lot of retirees, older ladies and gentlemen, a lot more older ladies because they outlive us. And a lot of them are old enough to remember what it was like before Roe. Remember what it was like when women died of, septicemia from ectopic pregnancies gone wrong and nobody would help them and they didn't even have the option to end a pregnancy that was, a stillborn pregnancy, and so they lost their ability to have children, period, or couldn't get one if they were, the victim of incest or rape. They remember, and they're going to remember this fall. And again, people can talk about all the hypotheticals they want, but right now in the United States of America, women are second-class citizens, again, because of the direct action of Donald Trump, the Republicans in the House and Senate, and specifically the voters that allowed it to happen in 2016, as if they didn't know. We know this time. We know. We know the Republicans, every time he's turned. Mike Lee this week posted on Twitter, show me the person who wants to get rid of contraceptives in the Republican Party. This is all fake news. Next day, Republicans put a bill on the floor to get rid of contraceptives, to outlaw contraception. The next day, I'm like, I don't know, walk across the hall?
Yeah.
Not only are Republicans against... here's the other thing, too. IVF is a great example. In vitro fertilization requires the creation of multiple fertilized eggs for the process to work. You need, dozens of them in some case to actually have one become a viable pregnancy. The rest of them are disposed of after that process. After you have successfully become pregnant, the rest of them are disposed of. To pro-life, anti-choice Republicans, those are human beings. And they view every single one of those embryos as a living thing. Now, none of them are lining up to get them implanted in their uterus to save them. Like, I'll take the leftovers. None of them are doing that. But what they want to do is end the process. By the way, you know who also wants to do that? Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s running mate. Mm-hmm. That's her cause celeb. And if she hadn't given him $10 million for his campaign, they'd be broke right now. We wouldn't even be talking about him being able to buy yard signs, much less an ad someplace. And that's her only goal, is the elimination of IVF. And do you think it stops there? We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide. That's not the...
Because we have to go to break.
Oh, yeah, I understand.
I wish I would have called Hal with his old "that's not nice" when you played that. Because I see the womp, 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 and then go into music. I'm like, damn it!
In a world.
Right. One man faces the difficulty of putting on his underwear without his toe getting caught in one of the legs and falling over into caving his head into the sink and being found alone with one leg in his underwear and pooping all over the floor with a head injury.
And I tell you, that's a huge fear of mine. When when that toe gets in there a little too good, I'm like, oh boy, that could have been the end of me. I don't like this at all.
Well, you're a harder they fall kind of a size dude.
Yeah. You get as tall as me, and every little thing she does is magic.
Right. Yeah, I'm closer to the ground, so I feel, I'm not as nervous.
All right, 30 seconds.
Thank you.
Yeah.
"30 seconds." Hi, chat room. Hit the like. Thank you, Lady Beatrice. On NPR, I heard of a woman who died where ending her pregnancy would have saved her life.
You're locked into the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Yeah, Lady Beatrice gave a super chat in the show, and she said, on NPR, I heard the story of a woman who died where ending her pregnancy would have saved her life. There are others, too, no doubt, whose blood is on this SCOTUS. Agreed. But again, the members of the SCOTUS, and look at the bump stock ruling this week, which an absurd threading of a very small needle by Clarence Thomas to basically argue that the ATF can make no regulations on its own based on previous law. That's what this was really about. It wasn't about bump stocks. It was to limit law enforcement's ability to react on their own in a normal way. That they basically have to create a stopgap in the Republican House to stop, if somebody comes up with a pulse weapon in the future that, is able to shoot like lasers through someone's chest, and they're like, yeah, this shouldn't be on the street, because not only does it go through the person you're shooting at, if you were trying to use it for self-defense, it goes through 3 houses behind them and a preschool and everybody who's lining up for, a cookie. So probably not. And they'll go, well, nothing in the 1935 Firearm Act that covers laser weapons, and you're like, okay, that's what they're trying to do. And what they go is, you have to pass a law to remedy this. You have to run it through the House, and then they guarantee there are people in the House, or at the very least, a Ted Cruz or somebody in the Senate who can just do a blind filibuster on it, just to pretend they're not the one filibustering it, and hide from it, never have to stand up and say what they're doing. Right? There was a story. There's a guy who was arrested in New York City on I guess on Friday, early Friday or whatever. He had a gun with 8 loaded magazine, an NYPD vest, and other weapons. Okay. He had like an axe stuck in the ceiling of it. He had several knives. He had other guns. He had handcuffs. He had a fake police uniform. This guy, Judge Sanson, after noticing a blacked out license plate on a black Ford Explorer he was driving around 1:30 a.m. So this dude's driving a blacked out Ford Explorer with he had painted with black paint over his license plate. So he's on his way to the airport. He ended up finding they pulled him over because of his license plate. And imagine being the police officer pulling this guy over. You're walking up to a blacked out SUV with tinted windows, a blacked out license plate, and your job is to be friendly.
Yeah.
They literally, like the body cam footage of, they're like, hey, can I see your license and that kind of stuff? And he tried to play it cool to get away, whatever. And then obviously they made him get out of the car. And
that dude's got like a Back the Blue Punisher patch somewhere on him.
No doubt. Yeah. So he got busted because it's New York with possession of a loaded firearm, criminal possession of a weapon, unlawful possession of ammo of an ammo feed device.
Yeah, there you go.
And an obscured license plate. Now, one of the things about the obscured license plate thing is that the license plate readers in New York and the surrounding area have been responsible directly for getting a bunch of people pulled over who were doing a lot of hinky crap. So basically, the drug dealers, human traffickers, and terrorists, they use these like glint plates that you put over your license plate that you can see it, like human beings' eyes can see it, but if you take a picture of it, it becomes opaque, right?
Yeah.
And that's I don't know from this which one it effectively was. They don't really go into it because it just happened. But they found an extendable baton with the words "Left me no choice" and "You gon' learn today" written on it.
Oh.
Yeah. And they're saying when someone is driving around with 11 different weapons, all of this ammunition, language on the baton that sounds threatening, transit uniforms that can be used almost anywhere in our subway system and in our transit system, we have a reason to be concerned. So anyways, this guy got arrested, thank God, and they found him on the way. Right. And this, I would like a couple of things. I would like to present this to our lovely folks that say cops investigate crimes that have already happened. They don't stop crimes before they happen. I went through, after this story came up yesterday, dozens of these kind of stories all the time. I don't know if you remember, there was a guy back in 2020, and he had a I don't know how else to like. He had a plot to do in Joe Biden, right? This guy.
Neat.
And he had it was a teenager. You know who he was acting on behalf of? He thought Bernie Sanders.
Oh.
A teenager who was arrested in North Carolina on child pornography charges this year had a van full of guns and drove within 4 miles of Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden's home with a checklist of how to, quote, execute him, authorities alleged. This guy, Alexander Treisman, he was 19. His van was reported abandoned in the parking lot of a bank in Kannapolis. He left it there to come back later because he was going to basically, that was the plan that ended up, they're charging, he was charged last year. After Bernie dropped out, he posted a meme with the question, should I do in Joe Biden? Should I kill Joe Biden? And they searched for Biden's home address. According to court documents, he bought an AR-15 in New Hampshire and then drove to a Wendy's within 4 miles of Biden's home. Documents say Treisman had a checklist that ended with the note "execute." He found it. Investigators also found a document called "A Guide to Mass Shooting" on his hard drive, along with thousands of images of horrifying child pornography, which is the weird link to this. And apparently what led them to...
It's the only thing that can get the visions of shooting people out of my head.
Right. And this guy was allegedly going to do this in retaliation for Bernie being denied the nomination.
Yeah.
There's plenty of awful to go around. And you have to understand that, let's just say, what do cops go through when they discover somebody's, they either get a red flag on a website that says, okay, somebody in our area is downloading from this site that we have a red flag on, and, we've got this IP checked, so we know we got to check this person out. And again, the last two FBI officers that were killed in the line of duty were killed in Florida, serving a warrant on a child predator. Not that far from Trump's house or Epstein's mansion, interestingly enough, apartment building, but still. Same thing with this guy. So the police show up to deal with this guy, and then find this van that nearby that he owns, abandoned, full of guns and a plot to kill a bunch of people and all that. One would think, obviously a child predator is going to be a dangerous human being, but as we've seen on To Catch a Predator, a lot of them, very few of them end up, fighting. They end up, cowering and going to jail, and as they should. They're not, and those guys aren't prepared to fight. They're there to do something else. But none of them are, some of them have weapons in their trunk and awful implements that point to where this would have gone, specifically. But in this kind of situation, a 19-year-old with this stuff on his hard drive, and you might not think, okay, this is a thing where the cops themselves are in physical danger dealing with this guy, right? They figure he'll just come quietly and whatever. And he has an arsenal. They found 4 rifles in his house when they were coming for this. A Sig Sauer, AR-style Sig Sauer, a 9mm handgun, and $500,000 in cash. That was because he had an inheritance, because his father was a well-known lawyer and activist who was the first person to introduce the Dalai Lama to a president. I don't remember which president it was who first met with the Dalai Lama, but he orchestrated it. This guy Treisman, his father. Now I don't know if they have any, if they're in contact with him or any of that stuff, but I'd just like to say that in both of these cases, cops following up on a normal, case. One case, a situation where they have red flags around, someone being a predator, so they go go to arrest that person, and they find this cash, and then this van belongs to him, or this guy driving in with a covered license plate, just on his way at 1:30 a.m. in a totally blacked out vehicle, headed to the airport with a police uniform and a metro uniform in his van, along with axes and knives and a ammo feeding device, whatever that is. I mean, it sounds like a belt feeder on a machine gun, right? When Republicans talk all the time about how Joe Biden says the threat, the domestic terror is a bigger threat than China or Russia. It is to life and limb. It is. The one-to-one, and this is why when people are saying even the Hunter Biden verdict that happened this week, which was like, when was that? Like 10 years ago? Doesn't that feel like 100 years ago already? That Republicans, because they're so gun happy, are excited about more guns that shoot faster and aimlessly on the street, because that's what you want to do is for self-defense is spray the entire place with armor-piercing bullets. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anybody downrange,
like that sort of amount.
In your neighbor's house or in an apartment building or a school, down the block. That's their problem. That they're clearly on the side of the criminal because they're behind them a quarter of a mile away, right? But in this, oddly enough, and I guess it's not that big a surprise, is that a lot of right wingers are saying that the charge against Hunter Biden should have never been brought. It was not. It was not necessary. This shouldn't even, many of them don't believe even there should be registration or even a form that you have to tell the truth about yourself to buy a gun in the first place. So why would they support the tighter enforcement of it? I even said when he was convicted, I was like, it's great to see Republicans everywhere finally coming out in support of stricter enforcement of gun laws. Cool.
Yep.
And the president himself not only said he would not pardon his son, he said he would not commute his sentence this week. He will let the whatever the ruling is stand. Right?
All right then.
Right. That's consistency for you. I don't expect him to do any real jail time. I don't think anybody else does. The only people who do jail time in regard to that particular thing is a lot of people get probation. A lot of them get the inability to own a gun ever again. Those kind of things. Yeah. But they don't get jail time unless it's tacked onto something else. You lied on a form and then you sold it. It's usually a straw man purchase is what people go to jail for. Not buying a gun, lying about it because you need it, and then throwing it away. The other thing is if the gun had been used in a crime, they will also put that. You gave it to somebody as a gift and then they killed somebody with it, and then you lied that you said it was for you, right? Yeah, so that's right. Not pardoning Hunter is a trick, right? That's what they've been saying.
Yeah.
But they were saying it's the smallest of all the charges. Okay, first of all, no. And tax charges being what they are, and yes, they're important. But the idea that that you think a crackhead buying a gun is the least problem, and that you want crackheads to be able to get away with buying guns, apparently. It seems like that would be the situation where 1-to-1 more deaths of Americans could occur.
Yeah.
Not paying your taxes, maybe long form, you could kind of argue that you're undermining Social Security and shaving a couple of weeks off of grandma's life at some point or whatever. But this is direct. Crackhead buys a gun, lies about being a crackhead, the gun gets out and then is around, and then one of their dopey friends gets it and shoots somebody up, or they themselves are on drugs. Like I'm talking in the vernacular of the people who are discussing how they talked about Hunter Biden up till this point. All of a sudden, like the whole last 3 years, he's been the crackhead in chief and the crackhead son of the crackhead and crackhead all the time. And now that he's, busted for losing a gun while being a crackhead, they're like, is this really even a crime? They don't even want to bring that part of it up because they don't want anyone to be denied a gun for any reason at all. And for the record, a bump stock is a conversion kit that turns a regular gun into a machine gun. Clarence Thomas is a moron who is bought and paid for by his weird old handler, Rich dude.
Pick one.
Yeah, it's absurd. It's absurd. And again, this is how they will guarantee that that any modifications to guns and that kind of stuff are outside the jurisdiction of the ATF, so that the Senate or the House has to pass a bill and the Senate has to pass it as well, and the president has to sign it. And they're guaranteed that they'll have at least one person being a stopgap in that process to keep it from happening. We'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide. Thank you, Lisa Phillips, for the super chat. Appreciate that. And thanks, everybody, on Facebook for the likes. That helps a lot. I think also you have to use the angry emoji for us, if you could. Throw that angry emoji in there. Yeah. Heck, hold on. I'm going to take this. I have an idea. Let's see. We'll go to here. We'll go to this guy. We'll go add source. We'll do this. And that's excellent.
Angry.
Yeah. And we'll go to here, and we're going to squeeze this down, and let's see. Move, you silly thing. And then,
getting some good angry emojis in the YouTube chat, too.
Excellent. Okay, cool. And then I'm going to put this behind you. And then Twitter folks, throw in, feel like emoting right now. I put something in, so we'll see if this works. Just throw us some emotes in the Twitch chat.
I'm going to refill my coffee. Right back.
Just as I try. Never mind.
I'm doing it.
There you go. It has to be on the Twitch side of things. And the YouTube people are great with the angry emoji. Although I maybe that helps us in the algorithm. I don't care. That's totally good. There you go. Now Johnny's going to have to live with those behind him. Hold on. He won't see it until he comes back. Hold on. That's going to be funny. Hold on. Try to squeeze this out. Get down here, you crazy thing. Yeah.
I also had to check to see if Flora was still breathing. She had her first urinary tract infection in 2 years.
Aw.
When they said,
Thank you.
thank you. When they said that, she might have a couple more months to live. And here she is. Rickety as fuck.
We got Chud back from the crematorium. Yeah. She's upstairs. A little paw print.
I was pretty weepy yesterday. I didn't know what was going to happen. I was like, oh my God, is this going to happen to me now too?
Yeah. Well, I love you, and I know what it feels like, and I do. So.
Yeah, I know what yours feels like, so to speak.
What? What?
We spent some time together.
Yes. I thought you were talking about something else entirely. You're now surrounded by emotes, I want you to know. Can you see that?
Welcome back to the Hal Sparks
radio
I love
program,
that.
Mega
Worldwide.
We're
all over my live.
That's right. We're drowning Johnny Million in emotes right now to cheer him up, because we're both going through sort of our own version of cat withdrawal. Because
right now she's sleeping under the dining room table, which is like got all the chairs. It's really to keep me away, to keep me from giving her more meds.
Right. Yeah, they hate that.
I am the enemy right now. Yeah.
I know, and it's sad that that's the way you kind of like that it should go out that way. You know what I mean? Where I don't want to be mean to her, and have her go through this stuff the last, or final memories of me before she goes on to cat heaven, right?
It's just her. It's like you looming over her with a syringe.
Like, no, you were always so nice, right? Yeah. Yeah, Chud had that. She had a syringe full of stuff that we had to put down her throat. She just never took it. It was not good. I would have been better giving her shots, like actual syringe, as opposed to that's way easier.
Yeah, that's pretty easy actually. I didn't ever think I could give my cat a shot until I had to, and I was like, oh, I can do this. Yeah,
I did it with my buddy Rob Veeler, my roommate in L.A. He had two dogs. He had two Cocker Spaniels, and Taffy, the oldest, she started going on a hard fade at one point, and she had to get a lactated ringer to keep her alive. And my mom's a nurse, and I was like, and he just, I don't know if he was just squeamish about it or it was just difficult or he didn't think he'd do it right or something. Like, I'll take care of it. Don't worry about it. And so, after a couple of times, she didn't like it at first. After a couple of times, though, she would just hop up into my lap, and I would just bring the thing over and put the little needle in between her shoulder blades and kind of push it through there. And I would hold her as it went. And then as soon as it stopped, she would just kind of like fall asleep because she was exhausted anyways, poor thing. Anyways, I love you, brother, and there you go. And so that's why we're surrounding you with cheery emotes from the Twitch crowd on the
Betsy
live stream.
in the chat just said pet owners can learn anything.
Yeah.
If it involves keeping this loved one alive,
absolutely.
I'll figure it out.
I'll put up with it. Right, exactly. And by the way, Philip Itner is going to be joining us in the next hour.
Yay.
From Kiev. A lot of positive turn happening there, including, and you can always tell when Russia's having a really bad time because they start talking about peace deals again. Now the last one, second verse, same as the first. The last peace deal is a lot like what they're offering this time, which is, okay, let us keep all the areas we've taken and the parts that we tacitly still have control over that we just stole from you, and we'll stop shooting. Which again is again it's a horrifying analogy, but it is apt to the entire thing. Russia is making the case, I will stop sexually assaulting your daughter if you force her to marry me. And then since you can't sexually assault your own wife, we're good. That's what their peace treaty means every time. That's what they're saying. It's an absurdity. No. Get out. Not your territory. Never was. Even when it was, a state of the USSR, it was still its own standing area. The borders were drawn, well before 91, right? So that's it. This is them just trying to, what they realized after a while was the rope-a-dope of 91, where they pretended to be like, hey, sorry, yeah, we're not going to be the USSR anymore. We're going to be friendly and European and all that, which was crap. It was crap. It was a rope-a-dope. That's my opinion, and I'm sticking to it.
I bought it.
Yep. I think we all did. You know what I mean? I love the Moscow Music Peace Festival.
Yeah, I was like, well, what choice do they have now? Yeah, let's do this.
Yeah, and and good for them for opening up and all that kind of stuff. Meanwhile, they were kind of borrowing from Deng Xiaoping, which is, hide your strength and bide your time. So over the last little bit, the Ukrainians have again started re-seizing territory that the Russians had gotten because Marjorie Taylor Greene and their ilk got them, some breathing room by denying the Ukrainians weapons and the ability to, and again, in certain ways, I have no qualms about arguing that Marjorie Taylor Greene and her ilk are directly responsible for more dead Ukrainians than needed to die. There were a lot of unnecessary deaths because they allowed it to happen. And if it was up to them, they would continue that. Yeah. I happen to be this is the kind of, I'll show this on the live stream. I don't know that I could show it on, or even mention it on the show without getting into a bit of trouble. But this is the kind of stuff that you see the Warriors of Ukraine posting, which is Ukraine should give Putin a piece of land, about half a cubic meter. And then they have this little cartoon guy throwing dirt on Putin's grave. That's where they are about this. They're not in any way backing down. They're not like, okay, well, anything to stop just the randomness of the fighting. And again, the folks that are calling for a blind ceasefire, I would say here and in Gaza, as opposed to one that's predicated on the return of hostages in Gaza, for example, or a road to a two-state solution meted out by the Palestinian Authority controlling the area and the turning over of Yahweh Sinwar and the release of hostages so that there's a balance to it. Anybody calling for just to like stop fighting, what they mean is I'm on the side of the aggressor and they need time to reload. And that's been the case with all the Russian sycophants and the tankies supporting them as well. And we'll talk with Phil when he comes in a minute, but the current number of dead on the Russian side is 525,150. That's 1,090 human lives snuffed out since last night because Vladimir Putin wants some farmland and some gas wells. And maybe in the case of Crimea, some rich vacation property on the Black Sea. That's it. That's why. Not because of national identity, not because of NATO. NATO was never going to attack Russia. That's not the point. It's a defensive organization. The CSTO, which is Russia's version of NATO, expanded far faster and more violently than NATO did. Everybody joined NATO, voluntarily. The CSTO countries did it at the barrel of a gun. So it's an absurdity. And so the idea that there was I think even the New York Times ran a story on the ceasefire agreement last year, year before last at this point, that was initially out there. That's the one that everybody claims Boris Johnson wrecked, which if you read it is an absurdity. Again, it's let us take the territory we just stole from you and then some, and we'll stop killing your people. And the people there are like, no, this is our land, and get out or we will continue to kill yours. That's how a defense works. Also, in this particular case, I would like to say for the record, the use of the idea that this is the Ukraine war in and of itself is a manufactured lie at the expense of the Ukrainian people. This is the Russian war. Russia declared this war, and Russia is losing this war, and Russia chose this war on an abstract timetable. This was Russia's war to declare. Ukraine did not declare war on Russia at any time even from 2014 forward. Russia did. They invaded. They are invaders. So all of our colonizer friends out there who like to bandy about the word colonizer and colonies and colonizer, Russia is attempting to colonize Ukraine right now and genocide the people of Ukraine. You know how we know? They said so on TV themselves. We'll be back right after this with Philip Itner joining us from Ukraine. It's the Hal Sparks radio program, Megaworldwide. Support us on patreon.com/HalSparks. And you'll get there's other treats like a comedy show every month.
I love treats.
Its treats are good. Mm-hmm.
A couple people found my Patreon that I set up and never launched. I don't know how they found it, but I've only got like 3 things on there. Mm-hmm. Oh, Heather.
What did Heather say? Sorry.
Heather just said, Happy Father's Day. I lost my dad last fall after fighting cancer for 20 years.
I'm sorry.
Paying forward what I would spend on his Father's Day gift.
No. Thank you. And Brian says, hey, Al, remember her bump stocks led to ghost guns? I'm just saying. Yeah, well, that's what you're going to get is a bunch of, this is all just going to go straight to gang members. This is going to make gang shootings and beef shootings way more deadly. That's the end result of this. No one is going to return fire in self-defense with a bump stock. This will be all about like beefs and murders. And also, I'd like to add, if I could, this is a picture of a Ukrainian cat drinking a cup of tea that someone posted. I don't know why, but it's adorable. It's just there you go. So I thought I'd throw that in there since we're talking cats.
I love that kind of cat face. The
Yeah.
split and have to. You met Mara a few times. My my
Yeah.
teenage cat.
Yes.
She had like the tan on the one side.
Yeah, she gave me attitude and stuff, and she was like, whatever. And she was on her Switch the whole time. Didn't even
She just
look
look up over at me like, yeah, whatever, dude. One of my dad's friends. That's a pretty good cat.
Thanks. It's better when my voice isn't tired. I've been singing a lot lately, and I got to sing tonight, too. So it's always something.
It's always something.
Mm-hmm. So,
Tom
there's Heather's
remembers
thing.
Mara.
Oh, Heather, thank you so much for that super chat. Really appreciate it. And I'm sorry about your loss, and thank you for wishing us a happy Father's Day. I'm very excited about Father's Day tomorrow. I don't know what my son has planned, but I'm sure it's lovely. It is. It's really good to be one. I love being a father.
Yes, PB. The Flora filed a restraining order against me because I was trying to set up a treat cam.
You were on your on.
Yeah, for the live stream.
Yeah.
She saw, like, I called the technicians and stuff, and as soon as the van pulled up, she's like, yeah, no.
No!
Yep.
Yeah.
Next thing I know, I've got police are at the door. I've got to sign something.
Mm-hmm. Oh, there's Phil in the background. I see him coming in.
Oh, hey,
Yeah,
Phil.
there he is. Okay, hold on. Let me put him in here. This one right here. We'll put him in here. Paste. There we go. Close that. Excellent. There he is. Joining us, Phil. I think he can hear us. Phil, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you. Yep.
Okay,
Hey,
great.
Phil.
Cool.
Hey, guys. Switch on the lights there. See if that
Perfect.
makes it any better.
It does.
You look great.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Good. Okay. I take it we're in a break.
Yes, we are.
Yes.
Great.
Yeah.
There's one of my stream viewers, Sean Stuckey, has brought to my attention there's a guitar pedal out there called the Meowdulator.
Oh, wow.
That man.
Please tell me it does what it sounds like.
Cat meow.
Mhm.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So he's single-handedly started a collection for it. So we'll see how that goes. I think if I promote it, I might be able to get enough to cover the cost.
Coming back.
You're listening to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
I've had people walk out of me before, but not when I was being so charming.
Video streaming at halsparks.com.
I don't care for you if the putrid sludge you're troweling out.
Plus face little pimp stick.
True progressive talk.
Might be a good time for you guys to give up.
Welcome to the show. Philip Itner joining us from Kiev right now in front of his picture of Olga, which is appropriate to my mood about a couple of things this week in particular. How are you, sir? First, right out of the gate.
Yeah, good.
Yeah. There, I got all fired up because there was this story that Russia has been listing Ukrainian children that they nabbed on their adoption website in the country.
Yep.
Just blatantly, like, this is the kid. This is where they came from.
70. How many? It's like several thousand.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember exactly how many. I mean, when I started our first episode of On the Edge was with Michaela Kuleba, who runs the foremost organization for caring for these kids, and the number of kids that the Russians are screwing with and abducting and taking to Russia or sending into kind of re-education camps. The numbers in the hundreds of thousands.
Mm-hmm.
It's a genocide. It's a straight up 100% genocide, and they're proud of it too. That's the other thing. I mean, they don't even hide it; they post it openly. You know, and they're proud of the fact
that was the sticking point for me, was the fact that they were just
Pretty
they're not
obscene.
even going, oh, that's this kid. That's a picture of a child that was taken. They gave him a Russian name or a different name or any of this. They're using their actual name. They're just Yeah, we have them. So we're just going to put them with families. We're doing it anyways. Nothing you can do about it.
Yep.
Just, yeah.
Well, their psychosis is such that they actually do think, or they've convinced themselves that they're doing a good thing by. They either say that they are taking them out of the danger zone of the war, not overlooking they overlook the fact that they're the ones conducting the war and starting the war,
right?
Or they say we are denazifying them. We are deprogramming their identity as a Ukrainian, which they see as a false identity and which they equate with Nazism, with fascism, wrongly. And so they're proud of it. They openly say it. It's disgusting. It's really reprehensible.
If you want
that alone.
If anybody wants a single thing that can get a fire in your belly about this whole monstrous engagement, is this idea that we're worried about NATO on our doorstep, so we abducted 60,000 children, and we're just either handing them out or adopting them out or selling them or whatever in our country to whoever wants one, because that'll show NATO the alignment. It is repulsive. It is one of the things that turns my stomach about this whole engagement. Much of it is war, and war is awful, and all the details of it we understand as part and parcel to it. It doesn't make it any less awful, but you're aware that that's what happens. This part is special to the Russian plot. This is specific to Russia. I have heard of no other country, maybe in Myanmar or sort of like Boko Haram.
Pol Pot. Yeah, Pol Pot maybe.
But in the modern era, like recently. In the last
recently
30 years, I haven't heard of any country abducting children as part of their war. And even Boko Haram does it as a constant terror thing.
What about the Uyghurs? What about the Uyghurs? Did the Chinese do a reprogramming?
No, they breed them out of existence. They put a male Han Chinese dude in the Uyghur family, and they don't let the husband have sex with his wife anymore. This guy does, hoping that they will have a Han child.
Yeah, that's awful too.
I
can tell look, when I sat down with Kuleba and we talked about this, there were some things that I had to leave on the cutting room floor. Because the stories of the kids that escape, and they come back. There was one story. I say there were stories plural. There was one story that I had to remove, and I won't repeat it here because it's
of course awful. For the same reason.
For the same reason, and I just don't like to dwell on this. It's too ugly a thing. But they use sexual abuse. They use violent sexual abuse, purposely violent sexual abuse on children that I won't say how low the ages go, but it would turn your stomach. It's beastly. It is inhuman, beastly behavior, and what they do, they take these kids and they force them they force them to do the Russian, like for example. They'll make them stand up in the front of a new class where they're clearly the Ukrainian who's been brought in. They'll force them to sing the Russian national anthem. They'll punish them with corporal punishment if they speak in Ukrainian. They do everything to pound the idea of being Ukrainian out of their heads, and they use their fellow classmates. I say fellow classmates. They use the other children in the peer group in the school that these kids are dropped into to physically abuse the children. They promote bullying. They promote cruelty because they want to make these kids' lives as miserable as possible so that they renounce being Ukrainian. It's some of the most horrible stuff ever. It's just, and there's a reason why. That's why Putin is wanted at The Hague for that particular crime, the abuse of children. So it's genocide. Yeah, and you're right, Al. This even if we didn't talk about the massacres and the mass graves and the indiscriminate bombing and the targeting of civilians, or
civilian
go on and on.
Buildings in Odessa
and
now and in Kharkiv currently, right now,
right now today. We've come under serious attack in the last week or so as well here. We're suffering from the lack of electricity, which only aims to make civilians suffer. But aside from all those horrendous crimes, and they are terrible, terrible crimes, what the Russians are doing to Ukraine's children is enough for me. And not just me. I know a lot of people as well. It's that in and of itself should be enough for us to realize this is a plague. This is a cancer. This is wrong. That alone should be enough to get our support.
Other than the sort of like NRA money that the Republicans counted on for a long time, that came, we know it came through Russia. Russia funneled money in. The Maria Butina case proved it, that they were funneling money in a country, by the way, where you have no gun rights to speak of. The irony that anybody thinks that, it's kind of like when they talk about Orban and they're like, he's got great control over his country. Well, nobody's allowed to have a gun. The whole country's a gun-free zone. So I don't want to hear that he's running the place like a strongman, because he doesn't have to worry about it at all. But in terms of Russia, they funneled this money through, and other than that money, which is dried up largely insofar as we know, I don't get why, especially the Q group, other than the fact that they're getting these talking points directly from them, doesn't recognize Russia as this trafficker in children. If that's their cause célèbre, they're on the nose about it. And like I said, they list these children on their adoption site. They admit where they came from. These are not orphans. They're on an orphanage site, and they have parents. These kids have parents in Ukraine. And so I don't like.
Think about the fact that, and this just adds to the egregious nature of it all, is that even if these kids are found, or there's a relative that is found that can be connected to these kids, the Russians are going to fight them, they may not. So if they're taken at 10. Let's say these kids were taken at 10 years old, and it takes the Ukrainian family to recover them. It takes them a 10-year process. They're not kids anymore. They're not kids anymore, and you've taken away this integral part of their growth, and they'll never be the same again.
Right.
So for the Republicans who scream bloody murder about the treatment of children, they're willfully overlooking this. And it's disgraceful. But then again, how we know this? They are willing to look. They are willing to overlook all sorts of things about the Russians, because in many ways they're fellow travelers because of the white Christian nationalism, and in many ways they use it domestic politics. If Biden's for it, then we got to be against it, sort of thing. This should be above politics, domestic politics. This should just be the Russians are behaving, atrociously, and that should be enough. But it isn't, because these guys, in Trump's Republican Party, arguably beforehand, but they don't genuinely care about these issues. They're political weapons to be used in the political arena.
Precisely.
So don't tell me you're for gun rights. Don't tell me you're protect the children. Don't tell me you're for pro-life. 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 Abortions are easy to come by in Russia. It's not hard to get one.
Right. I think Putin's favorite form is pushing her out the window. Or kick him down a flight of stairs. Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Yep.
It's brutal.
We know of at least one instance of that when Putin was dating a ballerina, a Russian ballerina, and he locked her up in his mansion down on the Black Sea coast in Sochi. And apparently she did get pregnant, and I don't know if Putin did the beating himself, but she miscarried. Either Putin beat her so badly she miscarried, or one of his thugs did it. But
did it for him.
This is a widely known story, and well upheld by some pretty reputable journalists, in the Russian press corps. So the ones who kind of get out.
We do have some good news in terms of U.S.-Russian relations, or U.S.-Ukrainian relations, and some bad news for China-Russian relations right after the break, which is pretty hilarious. Like the shift this week was amazing. So we'll get to that right after the break. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. Philip Itner has a show now, his own podcast called On the Edge on his YouTube channel. Please check it out. Philip Itner, spelled with one L for Philip, two T's for Itner, and we'll be back right after this. Yeah, the 10-year agreement.
10-year security agreement.
Yeah.
The German arms factory where they're building a new infantry fighting vehicle that opened this week. It's going to be churning out Ukrainian IFVs. The West is starting to look at long-term support for Ukraine, which and then at some point, obviously, we'll have to talk about Putin's quote-unquote peace offer. But
I mentioned that before you came on. I mean, second verse, same as the first.
He knows it won't be acceptable.
Yeah, of course. But it gives ammo to the Tucker Carlsons and the Scott Ritters and the whatevers of the world to say, hey, we're seeking peace, right? Which is just ridiculous. Again, if you let me keep your daughter, I'll stop beating her. That's the argument. You want your daughter to keep getting beaten then? I guess you do. That's the conversation. It's ridiculous.
And by the way, you can't put up another fence, or you can't go and get a buddy to be your pal in your defense in the interim, and in 5 or whatever years, I'll come back and get your other daughter. It's BS. And by the way, I mean, as you say, it's like if you want me to stop beating your daughter, sort of thing. I mean, there's no way they're going to accept losing Zaporizhia and Kherson, much less Donetsk.
We're back in 15.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Non-starter. Thanks, Chicago. Ugh, disgusting.
Yeah.
Whole thing is disgusting.
Right. And I'm sure we have questions in the chat too, so we'll get to those as well.
We do. We got a few.
Yep.
Welcome back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Part of the G7 meeting this week involved Zelensky and Biden meeting together for a good long while, and then signing a 10-year security agreement between the U.S. and Ukraine. A long-term friendship pact that. And by the way, not dissimilar from what we effectively agreed to when they gave up their nukes in the 90s. That was the point. We basically said, you give up your nukes and we'll protect you if you're attacked. You don't have to join NATO. We know you're not there yet. The leadership of the country at that point was still under the thumb of Russia largely. So we know you're not ready to be, that tied to the rest of Europe, but if you ever do, you're fine. You can. But in this particular instance, this 10-year security agreement is a big deal. Yeah.
Well, in the Budapest memorandum, or the Budapest agreement you're referencing there, the whole point of it is give up your nukes and we will guarantee. The word is in the document. We will guarantee your sovereignty and the borders that you have right now, and we're not holding it up. We're not holding up.
No, we did not do that.
The bargain. No, we did not. And I know a lot of Ukrainians that are pretty ticked off about it.
I agree. I mean,
if they had nukes, this would not be happening. None of this would be happening.
Right. Yeah.
Not that we want to see proliferation, but
no. But we also would,
it is a fact.
again, the leadership at the time, Yanukovych versus Zelensky, there's a huge difference, in who they are and their trustworthiness, and whether you want that guy to have nukes versus you trust Zelensky or somebody with them is a totally different thing. And that's why Russia's getting more and more nervous that effectively that the West is going to put nukes, I mean, that's what they're talking about, but it's really anti-ballistic missile systems on their territory, because that would guarantee their protection, because those anti-ballistic missile systems also can fire long-range stuff as well, or guard systems that do, so that they can they can be defensively protective of themselves as well. So, but this is a huge deal. It is. I mean, obviously, it won't be ratified by Congress, and it does not, because you couldn't right now with the one vote majority of Republicans in the House. But there's this idea that Trump might overturn it if he gets in, which he won't, and he can't. So because again, there's no way he rescinds that agreement. It's just not going to happen, even if he was in there. It's just he'll never find his way around to doing it. He'll talk about it, and then he'll blow it off. That said, it's a huge step forward for us. And
it is. But one other possibility though is that Trump also might not. He might not
live up to it.
Live up to the agreement.
Yeah,
he might just say, you know what, I'm not going to
blow it
executive
off. Yeah.
action. We're not going to send this group of weapons or this amount of money or whatever it is, and just go in contradiction of the agreement and dare everybody, what something Trump always does, and Trump folks always do is break a rule, break a law, and then go, I dare you to hold me accountable. Mm-hmm. I could see that happening. It wouldn't be good. Look, I mean, it wouldn't be good if Trump gets back in for Ukraine.
Yeah.
But you and I both don't think that's going to happen.
No, agreed. No. And the other big story, I guess, on the other, the other tack of it, of course, was, and then we'll get to our questions. Johnny's been grabbing a couple from the chat room, is the fact that Russia, because the U.S. issued another series of sanctions on Russia that effectively removed the U.S. dollar from being able to be traded on their currency exchanges and to be used to trade their stocks in their companies, which aren't worth crap anyways and are effectively just cover for them to launder money. Huge thing. So they shifted to the yuan as their primary foreign currency. Now, they were already there because nobody else is trading with them on any mass scale. It was already, that was the number. But everybody in the country who was buying stuff that they really wanted needed dollars to do it. So there was a run on banks not to get rubles, but to get U.S. dollars this week, which is, that's the first time I think I've ever heard of that happening, where there was a bank run in another country for a foreign currency.
It happened before. It happened in Russia before in 1998, and I was there for it. I saw the devaluation of the ruble in 1998, and it was catastrophic.
Yeah.
And I remember very well those lines of people calling around, and it would be like somebody would get a tip off. Oh, this bank has still got dollars, and it would be like the kind of
like the Cannonball Run. Everybody just blaze a trail over there.
No, there would be an underground, kind of network of this kind of, what's
a telegraph?
Kind of kind of an underground telegraph kind of would circulate, and you'd have masses of people like coming at this one branch of a bank. And it looks like something similar happened this time as well. Again, this is something Vladimir Putin, when he rose to power, promised the people of Russia would never happen again. He rose to power on the idea that the chaotic 90s and the era of Yeltsin would never return. And it is. And it's worse than the 90s.
Yeah, totally.
It's worse in a lot of ways than the 90s. In some ways, not so much. In other ways, I mean, like back in the 90s, they didn't even have like bread on the shelves sort of thing.
Right.
period right after the USSR collapsed. But even in terms of like more far-reaching and damaging repercussions for Russia's actions, the sanctions, the turning Russia into a pariah state, that's far worse than what was going on in the 90s.
Of course.
It supports my belief that Putin's in trouble.
Yeah, financially, it's the same situation you have with China to some degree. And you can compare it to what happened to Japan in the early 90s when they had their collapse. And the difference, I will always argue, is that at the time of Japan's collapse, they had friends in the world. Yeah. Right now, Russia is, and even Russia, when the ruble collapsed, then, I mean, they had friends. There was support, right? Mm-hmm. There was actually support, like people were like, well, they're a fledgling democracy. They're trying to find their way out of communism. We'll give them every benefit of the doubt. And what happened? Let's grab a question if we could right before the break. If we can get a short one in, and then we'll get them right after the break too.
Right on. Okay, this is a good one from Berkeley Dowd. With aid and weapons now flowing into Ukraine, what resources are now needed the most?
Yes, weapons are flowing in. Aid is flowing in. Not enough weapons. We're still going to need more. I know it's frustrating, but in particular, air defense is really important. And just we need to improve our production of artillery shells. Those are two things that, although we are giving weapons, those are two things that we still need to improve upon. Aside from that, we're already giving them financial aid. It's that's a good question. What more after that? Diplomatic ties, securing more diplomatic ties. It may not be stuff coming in, but one area that we could focus on is trying to expand diplomatic support for the Ukrainian defense effort and the war effort, basically, and that would include like the global South, to get everybody on a single page, or at least as many as we possibly can, so that we can, it's not just Western NATO states that are going to the Kremlin and saying, you got to cut this out, you got to stop. I think if there were countries from outside of the alliance that were that we're saying that to the Kremlin, it would be helpful. So maybe not something that can be sent here, but a global effort to try and shore up diplomatic resistance to what's happening here with what the Russians are doing. That might be an important next step.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Gotcha. Let's take a break. We'll come back with more questions right after this. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide, on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Yeah, this is the there you go. Let's see. Is it heavy in here? Is it here? Yeah, there's the chat. Let's see if I can get the I can't show. I got to come up with a new window where I can show all three of us and articles and the like. That's the next step in my little design that I need to make one for. But the ruble hit a 1 month low amid U.S. sanctions and is effectively just on a downtrend. Pegging it to the yuan is just terrible because the Chinese they manipulate the yuan every single day. They wake up every morning. They have a guy who's literally in charge of deciding how much it changes.
Yeah.
And its value. It has based on nothing other than that guy's say so. Okay. It's so ridiculous.
Yep. They're in trouble. They're in real trouble. I don't think it has anything to do with the peace offer. Some people have surmised that they're realizing that they're in financial trouble. I don't think that's. I don't think the peace offer was real.
No, I agree.
So
You're locked into the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Welcome back. Let's take some questions from our chat room, Johnny Million. Who do we got?
Right on. Next, I've got Ed's 3D Tech. Did Russians surrender in the north near Kharkiv?
So there have been entire units that have surrendered, but I don't think that the entire battle group, I don't think has. No, in fact, I'm sure if it had, I would have heard about it. There hasn't been a mass surrender. The Kharkiv offensive is petering out at best. It was never meant to take the city of Kharkiv. That was never a realistic plan. They've put into the field 50,000 troops. Kharkiv is a town of built for 1.2 million people or 1.5 million people. There's no way you take a city that size with 50,000 troops. And that's also including you're going to have to take out the surrounding areas. But it's not going well for them.
Yeah.
It's look, they're making incremental gains in a place here and a place there, but they're already narrowing the gap between the artillery. It used to be for every 10 Russian round that was fired, and a lot of them were duds, by the way, because they're getting them from the DPRK. But anyhow, there used to be 10-1 Russian to Ukrainian shells, and we've already had that to 5-1. That stat came out today. It's still not great. It should be better than that, but it does indicate that things are not going Russia's way on the battlefield as well as diplomatic.
Yeah, Russia they did a big push that was about a month long from May 10th to June 10th. They threw everything they could at Kharkiv. They lost 4,000 soldiers, which is specific to the Kharkiv offensive in town, inside the area. And that doesn't even include the greater oblast around it, where the fighting continued. They lost 4,000. 52 tanks were destroyed as they tried to take Kharkiv. The other 59 armored vehicles, 165 artillery systems. They lost 6 units of air defense systems, and 425 bunkers and shelters were bombed and made useless by the Ukrainians. 37 ammunition warehouses in just 1 month of fighting in the Kharkiv offensive. You're talking about somewhere between 14 and 25,000 soldiers lost in that month in the greater surrounding area.
Yeah, in the offensive effort.
In the offensive effort to take Kharkiv. Yeah,
it's just
it's grotesque. And for nothing, they gained nothing. They damaged the city, and they did a lot of damage, but they didn't take any of it. They still don't have it. Bogged down about 2 weeks in. They thought they were getting a toehold, and then even without the extra arms, they bogged down and couldn't make any progress.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And I'm in touch with people in Kharkiv. I haven't been out there during this period during the full offensive, but I'm in touch with people out. I've been in touch with people out there, and even though they still get real long periods of air raid sirens, and of course they also do get hit. But some semblance of normality is returning to the streets of Kharkiv. People can go out to the cafes. People can go about their daily business. That was not something that they could do at the initial stages of the offensive. So it's one blunder after the next for the Russians. They are so terrible at conducting war. They live on the reputation of the Second World War, but they were part of a grand alliance, which included, the industrialized might of the United States. I mean, the Russians like to talk about how it was they who took Berlin. Well, sure, but they drove in on Studebakers.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they're not good. They're not good at war. There you go.
Right.
Yeah, they're not good at war, despite what folks would have you believe differently, especially because of the sacrifice in the Second World War. But actually, they're really not good at conducting war for a variety of reasons, which are really complex. But it kind of does. It's part of their culture because you can't empower people, because if you empower people, they become a threat to the people above them.
Right.
So they don't have an NCO class. They rely on artillery. They disregard air power, or at least they don't hold it as high as they should. Western doctrine is far better at conducting war than Russia's doctrine, and they just throw people at the problem, and that's
again, human life.
Waves.
Even if they they hold human life in such low regard, it is a resource to them that you would think they would at least pivotally try to maintain, as much of a stop loss around it as they could, because it's a finite resource. I've always talked about one of the most horrifying corporate phrases out there is human resources. It's like the human as an oil well, essentially. It's just terrible. But in terms of war, in this case, like, you don't have an infinite number of soldiers. I don't care who you think you can scoop up in this and how many trips you can send old Wagner guys down to Africa to promise people, riches beyond measure, to fly up here and then hand a cardboard cutout of an AK-47 and tell them to run west. It's still not going to...
$2,000 a month, which is what they're offering these guys, is actually a decent wage in parts of Russia, particularly in the kind of far-flung provinces. So you're not getting the middle class, what little middle class there is in Russia, and you're certainly not getting the children of the rich and the privileged.
Yeah.
You're getting, and also you can't really sustain $2,000 per soldier when you're fielding, 500,000 soldiers, 700,000 soldiers,
right?
$2,000 a month for each one of those. It's not sustainable. So, it's just. I have said for a long time, I will say it again. Russians are willing to bear those losses. They can soak up those losses like a sponge. They have a long history of doing it. They have a culture of doing it. But if it is for nothing, because it's not about the soldiers' lives, if they die in the purpose of, some form of victory for the motherland, then it's acceptable in Russia's mentality. That is why I am saying, and have been saying for some time, we need to dissuade them of the idea that they're having victory here. That they must recognize that not only are they losing so many of their men, but also it's for naught, because they're not going to get back their Russian Empire. And that's what they really want. They will accept those losses. They will mourn them, but they will accept them as long as as long as Russia can be restored to its glory. They'll accept it. But if they lose all those men and they don't return to being this, massive superpower, or, restore their empire,
which they aren't,
what they're not going to do, there's going to be hell to pay. And Vladimir Putin is, our next interview on the Edge is with a online guy who does a update, 2-3 times a week. He raises money for the cause, for supporting Ukraine and all the rest of it. Very large presence online, very big audience. Right. And he said, he put it very well. This is a guy by the name of Jake Bro. And he put it very well. He said,
"Hello, there is my friends." Right.
Yeah.
That's how he starts all of his
Hello, defenders.
Yeah, right.
Hello,
that's how
defenders.
He opens all of his videos. It's good stuff. Yeah.
It is good stuff, and it's informative, and somebody needs to be doing that. I'm going to let Jake do that. But I'll do the kind of more, contemplative, in-depth stuff. he can keep us informed on a more regular basis. But his quote that I use, because I've started doing these quotes on the kind of thumbnail, is there is a secret doomsday clock that has started ticking for Vladimir Putin and the Russian elite. We don't know when that clock is going to be up, but it has started. And he's right. He's 100% right. We don't know what that clock, when the alarm's going to sound and when the clock is going to be up. But we are on a one-way course for that happening.
Yes.
There's no way Putin survives this. No
Agreed.
way.
Yeah, they're not. There's no coming back. Let's grab one more question before we get to the break, if we could.
Right on.
Yeah.
Yes. This is from Tim Farrell. Have you ever spoken to soldiers from the front who have suffered the horrors of this war? Then would you?
Sure.
Maybe
all
for your
the time.
podcast.
No, all the time. I mean, do we want to get someone in for the podcast? Yeah, absolutely. The problem with getting a soldier in, it can be a little tricky because they're not supposed to. You got to be very careful about what they can talk about and what they can't talk about.
Mm-hmm.
If we could find a soldier who could get authorization to talk to us and who speaks good English. Absolutely. I'm less inclined to get in like a foreign legionnaire. I could do that tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
But I really would rather have a Ukrainian voice. I mean, it's possible. I do speak to them. I speak to them regularly. I speak to them every day, either online or you just, run into them. And I know some people who are fighting. So, it's the battle. The fighting has been intense. It's been awful. The dark days of having absolutely no ammo, thankfully, seem to be in the past. Morale does seem to be improving. There was never, ever a moment where I knew of any Ukrainian soldier who said, we're going to chuck it in. We can't fight anymore. The worst it got, the worst I ever saw it heretofore was the time where they were getting pounded by the Russians and they couldn't fire back. How demoralizing that was. And that is being put in the rearview mirror. So the morale is improving. And again, nobody has ever said to me, we're going to quit. We're going to, we want to surrender. That was never on the table because it's an existential threat. And these Ukrainian soldiers know exactly what will happen if they do lose this war, and it's unacceptable to them. So it's, just a matter of degrees as to how much are we going to support them, because they're not going to stop fighting. And it's do we support them in their defense, or do we decide that it's not in our interest, or it's too difficult, or we don't want to spend our money that way, or whatever else that the Marjorie Taylor Greens of the world, or the Scott Ritters, or the McGregors are saying, because the Ukrainians won't stop fighting. And so really what that means is either we support them and help them win and defend themselves and win this war, or if we do go down that route, are we really going to be willing to sit on the sidelines and watch a literally, and this is not hyperbole, genocide? This will be a genocide. This will be hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians
not in
killed
the opinion,
or imprisoned.
Not in the opinion of the ICG or some outside group, in the opinion of the Russians themselves. Yeah. So let's take a break, and we'll be back right after this with more questions from our chat room for Phil. He is live in Ukraine, and he's gracefully and consistently made it through these last couple of years, keeping the world informed of what's really going on in the personal cost. And we're grateful that he's with us on the regular. We'll be back right after this.
Hello, defenders.
Hello, defenders. Right. He's
his delivery.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite.
He's a very nice guy.
He's very nice.
He's a very nice guy.
He's practically Canadian.
He really does have that kind of sensibility, doesn't he? He's a very, very soft-spoken man, but very intelligent and very articulate. And it's a good chat. It runs about 45 45 minutes. We'll be putting it out tomorrow, 9 a.m. West Coast time, 12 Eastern, and that's around 7 o'clock my time here in Kiev. So we're still on schedule for that premiere, and that's kind of the schedule we're keeping.
Right.
Sundays 9 West Coast time, Pacific time.
Okay, cool.
9 a.m. So, yeah, it's a good one. It's a good one. And then we're continuing to get other guests, and we'll have other. I let the cat out of the bag that next week's guest will be Bill Browder, and I only did that because he just got knighted.
Oh, well, la-di-da.
Yeah, Bill Browder
back in 20.
La-di-da, indeed.
Thank you.
King Charles
Thanks,
just
Chicago.
knighted him. Thanks, Chicago. Yeah, he's a good chat as well. Of course, obviously, Bill Browder being really good with like anti-corruption efforts and financial stuff.
Right.
So it's a good chat.
Cool.
They're both good chats. And then we're getting more as we progress.
I am happy, you are happy. Let us be happy together, whether the weather is cloudy or sunny. I will always be your funny honey bunny. I am lucky, you are lucky. Let us get lucky together, whether the weather is cloudy or breezy. I'll be there to say, hey, come on, let's take it easy. Because isn't it nice to have the friends that you do? And isn't it nice that the sky is so blue? And isn't it nice to say I love you, chugga chugga choo choo, woo woo. I am smiling, you are smiling. Let us smile together, whether the weather is cloudy or stormy. I will still be there in the morning. I'll be right by your side in the morning. I'll make you breakfast in the morning. I hope that you like cereal.
Yay!
So get that in focus.
It's very difficult. Who's that?
My little Zelensky. It's my little Zelensky.
Yes, I have one around here somewhere. I pulled. I can't dig it up right now, but. So let's continue with our questions, but I would like to say that the 10-year agreement is my happy ending in that regard, and the fact that
it's good.
It's good, and the fact that I happen to like. There's a story, and I wish I could show it on the screen. It's a Newsweek story that says Putin has a gas problem, which I just love, and it's partly related to what we talked about in midweek about the failure of Gazprom, and many people will. The loss of $140 billion in yearly revenue. It's down from 200 to 48, I believe, at this point, which is a huge drop off in their primary industry. And Gazprom itself,
it's one of the
it's the
Gazprom itself is just. Yeah, it's a pillar of their economy. It would be. Right. I'm trying to think of. We don't have a business like that because we like to diversify, which is a smart thing to do instead of putting all your eggs in one basket. But Gazprom is basically almost like their treasury. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's that significantly tied into the Russian economy.
That's right.
So to have Gazprom operating in the red and taking a nosedive like that, that means that the Russian economy, that the coffers are in trouble. Gazprom isn't just any other company. It is.
And they hire only the best. Famously, Carter Page worked for Gazprom.
Mr. Eyebrow.
Yeah, Mr. Yeah. The guy who views All In with Chris Hayes as a thirst trap. Let's grab some more questions.
And this is from Lady Beatrice. What consequences or actions is NATO planning as a result of the actions against humanity? And if so, what's keeping them from acting now?
Well, I mean, we're supporting Ukraine. That's the most important thing that we can do because, Ukraine will fight this war if we just give them the weapons to do it. Mm-hmm. And if we start sending NATO troops in here, and there is this kind of like potential for NATO forces to be here either as trainers or to alleviate, some sections of the country that, would free up Ukrainian forces to then engage directly on the front lines. Yeah.
They do like security stuff in the other part in the rest of the country.
Logistics, or, you could send in Estonians, Estonian soldiers to do like, logistics or to do like, refugee camps and running, whatever. But, that does then put them at risk. And if one of them, if a NATO soldier dies, there is the potential, if they wanted to, if that NATO nation wanted to call in Article 5, where would we be? There's talk of, if they do something as stupid as use a nuke, that that's it. We come in full force. But let's, obviously nobody wants to get to that, because you'd have to have a nuke involved. It's like a no-fly zone would be great, but how do you enforce it? No, I think at the end of the day, we just really need to start getting our industry on a war footing. We need to give the Ukrainians every single weapon that they can possibly, that we can possibly give to them, and they'll fight the war themselves. I mean, that's kind of the whole point, is trying to contain this war within Ukraine, because if it spills out, it literally is the Third World War. And there are those who say we're already in it in a certain degree. Yes, that may or may not be true, but we don't have troops on the ground. And that is a different kind of thing altogether. So,
well, that's the part where we're not.
Let's help the Ukrainians.
What would make it a world war is to move it out of Europe specifically and the neighboring areas, and have all of the soldiers from those allied countries and other stuff engaged in it. That's the huge difference. And I think, and at that point, there is a tipping point that everybody talks about in terms of like nukes and whatever, that precludes all that. That well before the idea, and that's the fear with Russia, is that well before a ground war breaks out where the NATO countries decide to take it to Russia or whatever, this is, Russia already makes the decision that they're backed against the wall and they've got nothing to lose, or he decides he's got nothing to lose. The problem is that all the Russian leadership are hedonists. They're not jihadis. They don't believe that there's a great beyond they're going to go to, or they're going to sit next to Odin in Valhalla. They think they die, they're dead, and there'll never be another hooker in their future. And so that's it, right. They'd rather live a Lux life, hidden away, and at best maybe a Pol Pot, but at least you could have a chance to fight another day. Whereas there's just no situation. Obviously, if he ends up at The Hague, that's that. But he can believe, if he believes he can escape.
He'll fall out a window before he goes to The Hague.
Right.
But the other,
or somebody who looks like him.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's true too. But the other thing is, if the shooting does actually start between Western powers and Russia, then every Russian asset on the globe becomes a legitimate target. So those warships that are sitting off the coast of Cuba, that the Russians sent over there, boom, those are sunk instantly. Those are gone. They can't beat the Ukrainians. Do you think they're going to beat the combined military might of NATO? Come on. And they know it. They know it. Obviously, they know it. So,
that's why they're
if the shooting did actually start, it would be global.
Yeah,
because we would attack every asset. Africa, all the Wagner guys in Africa, boom, instantly
gone.
They're under attack.
Yeah, and also the idea that they're going to launch some sort of preemptive nuclear attack on anything is a kind of like, we'll show you. We're preparing for that. The U.S. has sent anti-ballistic missile frigates and all these other boats to the surrounding area. There are a couple of them in the Black Sea. We know that, which means if we know there's 2, that means there's 4 at least, and they're capable of knocking nukes out of the air before they get into the atmosphere. We've got other backups for that. So, we're definitely protecting against some sort of snap decision by the Kremlin that's not going to come. And again, largely because the people around Putin don't want to die next to him.
Well, and Jake brings up a good point in the podcast for tomorrow is and I don't want to give too much of it away, but he does bring up this point as well. So it's going to be really hard for them to convince their population they're winning if they
have
use
to
a
nuke somebody.
You don't use a nuke if you're winning. You don't need
the
to.
argument against them negotiating. Right? Russia never negotiates from a position of strength. They don't have to. They just take. If they're in a strong position, they don't have to come to the table. Why would they? And they haven't, and they don't. They never do. So the fact that he's even floating the idea of some sort of a plan means they're up against the wall, and it's a good sign. That's why oftentimes why they don't even, maybe they won't even try it, because they view it as a sign of weakness, because it's the only way they do it. If anybody starts to negotiate peace, they're like, we've got them on the run now. Why bother? And the reason they do that is because that's how they do it. It's not how the rest of the world does it. Again, it's why the United States has Native American reservations in it. And Europe doesn't have reservations for any of the groups that were run out of any of the other countries.
And when we were recognizing that our military adventures, our wars in Iraq and Afghanistan were not going our way, and we were going to withdraw, I don't recall us ever threatening to nuke Kabul or Baghdad. We don't do that. That doesn't come.
It's
from
an absurdity.
Strength.
It's absurd. Even Trump wouldn't float something like that. I mean, there's a bunch of people who are like, we should turn the Middle East to glass when we're in direct warfare because they think Iran needs to be bombed, and everybody around them, and that's where McCain's whole bomb Iran thing came from, was because that's the same old song. What he was saying is there's always these guys around singing that song, but none of them ever get in a position to do it because no one's stupid enough to listen to them. As McCain got busted being flippant about bombing Iran, the case he was making was, we're always surrounded by people, especially in the voter bloc and the activist crowd on the right wing, that says we should just nuke them back to the Stone Age and
the chicken hawks.
Yes, exactly. Yes, the chicken hawks in the right wing. Yeah. So we're only got about 2 minutes left. Is there a short question we can grab an answer to in there, Johnny Million, or?
Let's see. Is Crimea? This is from Steve McLeod. Is Crimea starting to shift to Ukraine?
No, not yet. It is going to come. Air defense is being knocked out. That's being done on purpose. I think the F-16s are going to be in the air very, very soon. It is not shifting in the sense of we're going to have Ukrainian troops on the ground in Crimea. That might eventually happen, but it's not happening anytime soon. What will, I think, happen very soon, and we're just going to have to see how this goes, is the isolation of Crimea. And again, this goes back to my other idea, or the other point I was trying to make, which is they are willing to sacrifice their young. They are willing to sacrifice soldiers for the prestige and the power and the pride of the great Russian Empire. If that is denied to them or put on the table as a potential risk, and we've lost 500,000 plus troops for nothing, that's when the worm will turn, I think. But Crimea is coming. It's not there yet. They're destabilizing their defenses, but Crimea will be on the table.
That's
soon,
right.
I think.
I want to thank everybody for tuning in today. Thank you guys for the super chats and the support. Thanks, 56 Nick Rich, for the rubles. He gave us $2, which is like hundreds of rubles. And I appreciate that. Thank you, Johnny Million. It's Johnny Million on YouTube and Twitch. On the Edge is Philip's podcast. I'm Hal Sparks. I'm here every weekend on WCPT, and I have a live stream at infotainmentwars.com. And unlike the original InfoWars, we're not being liquidated. See you next week.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Chicago. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chicago.
And I got to bug out immediately and hit the road because I got to be in LA in time for sound check. So I will see you guys later. Take care of yourself. Somebody else. Okay. Bye. See you later. Bye. There they go, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much. And I appreciate you guys. Thank you, chat room. Means a lot. So glad to be with you guys every Saturday. Gotta run. I gotta go. I'd love to stay around. I mean, there was a thing, but I gotta go.